promote and ensure further trust amongst your customers to conduct business at your organizations. Now, this is going to be for face-to-face transactions, and we also have technology that we're promoting for online transactions, and that's where we have our 3D Secure protocol. And so I just wanted to mention that as a small business, what's going to be important for you to really focus on over the coming year and years is going to be making sure that your bank issues you a chip card, because that's going to happen over the next year or so. And there's a really important date that's going to incent both banks to issue chip cards and you as merchants to adopt chip card readers or terminals. And that's going to be that on October 1st of 2015, we are actually instituting, along with the rest of the industry, a liability shift. And that liability shift, essentially what it does is, if your cardholder, your customer, presents you as a business with a chip card, and you have a chip reading terminal, then that's great, because that's going to help further prevent counterfeit fraud from occurring, and that's going to ensure that it's a chip-on-chip transaction, as we call it. If for whatever reason you have not deployed a chip reader at your business, then if that transaction is fraudulent as a result of a magstripe transaction that's conducted, because there will still be a magstripe on the back of the card, then that liability will shift to the business if it's a counterfeit transaction. And so that's going to be a pretty notable incentive for you as a small business to adopt a chip reader. And you're going to have more and more of your customers asking you about why you have a chip reader or why you don't have a chip reader. So if I could leave you with one important message, because it's going to happen quickly over the next year, and the liability shift date again is October 1st of 2015, I would encourage all of you to talk with your acquiring bank to ensure that you have a plan to deploy your chip reader, because I assume most of you have physical storefronts for the most part as small businesses. And for those of you that have e-commerce sites, I would encourage you to come up and ask me further questions, because I think I'm running out of time and Jenny's giving me the evil eye already.
No.
But I would encourage you to also look into and talk with your acquiring bank around secure online acceptance. Most of you aren't developing your own payment sites, and you're relying on a third-party provider to provide you that payment facility for online transactions. And some questions to ask them or to focus on would be ensuring that they're providing you with the industry standard of payment acceptance, which is around 3D Secure technology. I'll stop there for now, Jenny, because I realize I've already given you a lot of information. Have another cup of coffee so that you can pay more attention when she comes back to me again.
How we transact, payments, etc. Right? What we found, and let's just talk about point of sale terminals, for instance, right? 99% of all the point of sale data breaches around the world, the owner of that point of sale terminal is notified by someone else. Right? So when we start talking about what should small business do, right, we find that baking security into your practices when you start is a much better place to be, right? In factoring it, because we know, as we look at it, we see bad guys around the world scanning for your point of sale terminals on your, looking for how they communicate to the internet, right? And we find that weak credentials are there, or the default passwords are there. We've seen shifts in stealing the credentials to steal for the point of sale, to stealing your online banking and the things that the emerging market of risk transfer, right? I mean, as you're playing into your strategies, and October, 2015 comes quickly, you're going to start to see and ask yourself the questions, not only what are the technical measures can I employ to protect myself, and what are the $1
million. That's about like 1% out of their total revenue per year. Codespace's one hack and the company vanished. It's deleted. There isn't even a website. This is the risk for SMBs. They are not as resilient as the large corporations. If you're putting your data in the cloud, make sure you also have an external backup, because cloud providers can also lose your data. So one thing is build resilience into your systems. And the second thing I want to mention, even though there are many more, is build your awareness training for the employees. Awareness training, from the cost-effective perspective, it's the best line of defense, it's the best control. All of us that are working in offices, the last guy to walk out of the office in the evening, he knows that he must close the doors, turn off the alarm, and because we are aware of physical security. He understands the risks of physical security. But when it comes to logical security, nobody will tell him anything if he's using weak password or doesn't use a screensaver. We simply don't have this awareness, or even lock down his phone, which is like the first control to do. How many of us have a contingency plan, have some idea what to do if we lose our phone, what we do if we lose our main server? So basically, invest in awareness, employee awareness. There are great programs in the internet. Some of them are very free, and they can simply be a very cost-effective control.
Well, that's a great point. I want to pivot off that. So, the number of data breaches that we saw globally in 2013 were double the amount that we saw in 2011. So breaches are moving fast, but 89% of breaches are generally preventable in one way or another. So I want to play off what you were talking about, the advice to employees, sort of basic tips that small business owners can do. And I'm going to throw a couple topics out if you guys can hit on them a little bit. One that we at Google are really very strongly behind is something that Andy and Eduardo both mentioned, which is two-factor identification, or finding a way to supplement and make your password stronger by adding another factor that you have to use to verify your identity. The National Council on Cybersecurity Awareness, NCSA, we've been helping to underwrite a campaign that they're running called 2 Steps Beyond. They've been traveling around the country doing events with local law enforcement, with local small businesses, with the Better Business Bureau, with different partners to do trainings to teach businesses and individuals about how to train their employees and how to learn about easy things that you can do. But you don't even have to go as far as two-factor identification. You just need to know about how to set a smart password. We do a program called Good to Know with schools and students, and it's called the Good to Know Roadshow, where we've been traveling around the country with local law, with like U.S. attorneys and different folks, teaching kids in middle school how to secure your phones and how information is shared easily. And we have a password contest, and every single time, the kids in 6th grade beat the U.S. attorney for setting a better password, because adults' memories, they're kind of going, and these kids can come up with these passwords and remember them. So it's basic stuff like that. Your employees, you may have a password that all of your employees are sharing to log into your sensitive and critical systems. What happens when that employee walks out the door and starts a competing business the next day? There are little things like that. So I've sort of touched on some of them. These guys are the pros. But can you guys go through a little bit and talk about really sort of concrete, easy things just right now that you can do and to make your business and your personal system stronger? Eduardo, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a good question, Jenny, and it's something that we're focused on at Visa. From a Visa perspective, we're moving to risk-based dynamic authentication. And what that means is more and more is moving away actually from the use of passwords to conduct transactions or by the merchant for whatever reason. And all of you depend on legitimate transactions going through for your businesses to survive and thrive. So from a Visa perspective, we're trying to move away from the use of static information, your mother's maiden name, your pet's, your first pet's name, your first car, all of those things you have on Facebook anyways. And so the hackers have access to all of that information, and you're freely giving it away. And so more and more we're trying to move away from identifying you from the perspective of a static password that's coveted by fraudsters, and we're moving more towards risk-based dynamic authentication and identifying you based on the profile of the device that you're paying with, whether that's a mobile phone or a card or your internet site on your computer. We're going to identify you in other means that are going to give us more confidence that that's really you conducting the transaction versus relying on a static piece of information that's being coveted. And worse, how many of you have, my problem is I forget all my passwords. So I have so many freaking sites that I go to, I can't constantly remember my passwords, and by the time any site is asking me for more information, usually I abandon the transaction because it's frustrated me so much. And again, going back to what I said, the worst transaction is a legitimate transaction that doesn't take place for whatever reason. Your businesses depend on legitimate transactions, and we're trying to remove all of that friction from a consumer completing a transaction with you. So more and more we're moving away from static passwords as much as possible to conduct and legitimize and authenticate payments.
So Moshe, you've seen a lot of stuff. Answer this question, but also give us a profile that a hacker would love to see if they were coming in to try to break into a small business here. Like what would make them just cackle with delight when they hit your website?
what we basically learned is that the hacker using our own tools against us. I think in the last 4 or 5 major breaches, the one that mentioned Target, Home Depot, they were using the same tools that the network administration used for their own maintenance. Remote access tools, if you want specific names, the tools that, that the organization is using and not securing them properly. Okay? This is the best attack vector that the attacker can find. Why? Because we want to manage our servers very easily. We want to do it from our homes. We want to be able to do it from our phones on the vacations. And all of those remote access tools will open our network and our point of sales into the attacker. So the first thing we need to learn is to use those tools better. Use best practices in order to make sure that they are working correctly. Second thing, the attackers what we've learned in the last years, supply chain attack. All of us are using more and more suppliers in our network. Cloud computing is the best example, okay? You may be using a software as a service company. It has another provider that provides the infrastructure. Most of the attacks came from the supply chain. For instance, Target attack originated from the guys that does the air conditioning maintenance for Target. Very much non-IT, but they still had access to Target network. So choose your supplier carefully. Make sure that they understand their role in your security. So many websites have been defaced because the guys that run the naming services for the website simply change, they receive a phone call, change this, and these settings, and they do it. They don't think about the role in the customer security. So choose your suppliers. Pay a little bit more if your supplier can demonstrate that he understands your security needs. And when when talking about suppliers, I'm starting from air conditioning services and, I don't know, your landlords who provide the network infrastructure, and also the basic thing we're not thinking about, and also the complicated things like point of sale manufacturers and other suppliers we have in the network. So those are the two things I wanted to focus on.
I'm going to go to Andy for an in-depth answer, and then I'm going to start with a lightning round with Andy to wrap everything up. But Andy, you have a lot.
Well, I mean, certainly, I think, Eduardo and Moshe mentioned, the important things, right, the high level. I think keeping it simple, right, adopting change, at a pace that's going to be applicable to you and your business so that you don't try to go too far and create gaps, I think is very important. I think working with law enforcement and helping them or engaging with them to understand the global threats, right? As we mentioned, I will tell you, every major data breach I've been a part of, they all have a tactical or street level component to them, right? There's a person at the other side of the computer that's trying to commit something, do something bad to you, right? Law enforcement is very well in tune with what that landscape looks like. So engage with them, understand, what it is from your perspective, the type of data you have, the business that you're in. How are the bad guys attacking organizations like yours, today? I would say, one of the things that we look at Verizon is trying to shrink detection time, right? Because the time it takes the bad guy to get into your network, into your point of sale environment, your card environment, it could take months, and some organizations years before you would detect it on your own or someone comes to you, right? And so I would say, really push your vendors, right? You have a huge lobby here, right? You're working together in a coordinated fashion for a common goal. Push your vendors to drive low cost, high efficient, security products that are going to meet your business. I think that's very important. Obviously, Visa is doing a great job with pushing EMV, and fraud will, card not present fraud will go up, but card present fraud will drastically go down, right? And we're seeing some of those trends. So paying attention to the passwords and your authentication, keep your critical systems away from the rest of your business, right? Pay attention to the physical security controls that you're already in tune with, and engage with law enforcement. Law enforcement in the point of sale world, right? Last year, they notified over 75% of data breach victims when the entry point was the point of sale, right? Because of the way they do their cyber intelligence and their investigations around the world. And I bet you this as well, don't think that the bad guy actually knows that they attacked you, right? Don't assume that they are targeting you, right? They most likely have no idea who they attacked, right? Because they're going after, like Moshe said, the infrastructure of, say, the payment system, or they're going after a vulnerability that sits within a sector. And once they're just like businessmen like all of us, and women, right? If you have a vulnerability that exists in your sector, they will try to maintain that return on their investment, right? Renewable process, it works here, let's try it everywhere else, and as long as it continues to work, they're going to continue it. So if you get a bulletin from the government or from law enforcement or industry partners, take heed to it, because if it happened to someone else, you should implement it to yourself and make sure you're looking at those things, because it's going to learn from the mistakes of others before it happens to you. Because the way the bad guys attack small business is that it's repeatable and it's automated and it's fast, and they're just looking to attack you the same way they attack someone else without having to spend any more money or spend any more additional resources on it.
Okay, so we're going to come to the lightning wrap-up round. Because we didn't take questions from you guys, I've asked Eduardo, I have not asked Moshe and Andy, but I'm sure they'll agree. We'll be around at the front of the room to answer questions one-on-one when you're done. And we want to thank Javier and Mark for letting us do this. But I do want to do a quick lightning wrap-up round. It's early in the morning, you've had your 5 cups of coffee, thanks to Eduardo. What is the thing that you want each of these guys to walk away with? 30 seconds to 1 minute. What's the one thing you want everyone to walk away from? And I'm going to start with Andy.
You can win the cyber fight. You can win. It's something that is, bad guys want to take advantage of things that are easy, right? And so make it just a little bit harder, they're going to move on. Okay, number 1. 2, understand the role that you play, right? Everybody plays a role in fighting this war, right? You have pieces of information or cyber intelligence that would happen to you, right? Feel free to share that. Moshe talked about the information sharing. There's a lot of initiatives around the government. Consume it, right? Consume information, apply it, but also share where you can, where it's applicable, obviously with your privacy concerns, and make sure your business is where it's supposed to be. But I would say be an active participant in the cybersecurity community, even if it's just to make the knowledge for yourself, right? Know that you're going to get through it, right? You're not the first company to be breached, so it's how you respond to that, how you communicate to your customers, to yourself, your employees. Have a strategy and plan and prepare, because it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So if you don't have that plan in place up front, you don't want to figure out how to deal with it once it's already happened. So plan, educate yourselves and your staff, and do the simple things, some of the security 101 things that'll make it harder for a bad guy to come after you.
Moshe?
Totally what Andy said, but if I had to add one more thing, I would say in information security we have different kind of controls. We have preventive controls that prevent you from doing something. We have detective controls that will detect you, that will detect anything that will happen. We have corrective controls that can fix problems in the network. The most cost-effective for SMBs control is the compensating control. The same way that we check our credit card reports each month to see if we did not, if there is something that we are not aware of. Compensating control is very cost-effective. A backup is a compensating control. If you're not able to prevent a hacker from deleting your system, the backup will save you. This is what code spaces, which I mentioned before, didn't have. A backup which was external to where the attacker was. So think about compensating controls. We are aware of compensating control from accounting, right? Reconciliation reports each 6 months, each year. It's the same idea. Once every while, go back and see that everything is in order. This is the best defense, the best cost-effective defense for an SMB.
Eduardo?
Thanks, Jenny, again. I'll leave you with 2 things to do after you leave today's conference, or after you leave the conference this week. One is call your bank and ask them when are they going to issue you a chip card, and hopefully it's a Visa card. And if you don't know who issues Visa, I can tell you, come up and ask me. And the other is to make sure you ask your acquiring bank, or your bank that you have your merchant relationship with, how you can obtain a combination terminal. And you're going to want a terminal that's going to be able to facilitate NFC payments so that you can be hip and cool and take mobile payments. And you're going to want a terminal that you can dip the card, which is what a chip card is going to require. And of course, because we're going to be in a mixed environment, you're still going to see consumers use their magstripe on your terminal as well. So those 2 things, call up your bank and ask them when they're going to issue you a chip card. And second, ask them, your merchant bank, when and how you can obtain a combination terminal that facilitates both NFC, chip transactions that you're going to dip your card into, and swipe transactions, as we're going to be in a mixed environment for a long time. Thank you.
I just want to also thank Eduardo for the best use of props on the panel. I think that I'm slightly blown away and embarrassed here, although we did have a nice commercial. I just want to close with telling you guys, my piece of advice is just take a minute and empower yourselves. There's lots of people out there who are working on developing solutions for you, and take a minute to sort of look at those people and look at those proposed solutions in light of what you're hearing today. My small commercial is the Chrome browser is actually one of the safest browsers that's out there right now. We work really hard with experts here in this room. We have a lot of information on our website about it. It's part of our sort of Google suite of small business tools, which my fabulous colleagues will be telling you more about today. But I think some of the benefits of the cloud are that we can do our security updates very fast. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to download anything. You're not going to be fooled by somebody. I've actually done that on my own computer, downloaded something I thought was going to help me. Turned out it was malware. So find trusted vendors. It doesn't have to be us. There's lots of other good people doing this out there. Find trusted vendors in your payment space. Find other trusted vendors that are out there. I do think letting someone else take care of your data is something that you probably really want to think about as a small business person. And inside the cloud, you can set different controls so that not everybody has access to everything, and you're not, because a lot of breaches are human error. And it's sort of the same when we're talking about our driverless cars or we're talking about our banking for small business. You want to take the human factor out of it a little bit and protect yourself. So take a look at all the resources that are out there, but my advice is take 5 minutes when you walk out, if it's on the airplane, if it's at the bar, if it's like in line for one of the great workshops that's coming up, and think about do a sort of self-audit of your own business. And don't be overwhelmed by everything, because there's simple, easy things that you can start with right now that will lead you to some of the more complex things that we talked about here. But I just want to thank you all for staying here and paying attention. This is a really important topic, I think, for the future of this country's economy. And for the globe. I mean, if you're going to grow, you're going to have customers trust you. And if you can't keep their information safe, it's going to hurt your brand and it's going to hurt your bottom line. So thank you for taking time this morning. I want to thank Mark and Javier and everyone here, our great staff who served us breakfast, which we didn't get to eat, but that's okay. And we'll be around for questions. Thank you.